Your emotions aren't good or bad in a general sense. They're good or bad depending entirely on the situation you're in. Whether it's anger, jealousy, anxiety, depression, or hope, gratitude and excitement, your emotions have evolved to serve one core purpose: to help your genes survive. So to give you the main summary of the video straight away, the key question isn't to ask, how is this emotion helpful or unhelpful, but to question, in what situation is this emotion helpful or unhelpful? And to realise the main way you're going to be able to flourish throughout life, whether it's mentally or socially, is to be able to feel the right emotion at the right time for the right duration. Because the opposite, feeling the wrong emotion at the wrong time for the wrong duration, is where we start to see problems like mental illness and other life difficulties. To give you some quick examples, feeling anger at the right time for the right duration in response to someone being violent towards you is a great way to protect yourself and others. However, feeling anger for, don't know why I'm doing this pose, for a little bit too long, such as holding a grudge, is going to cause you to be stressed out. Jealousy. Feeling jealous at the right time in response to your partner being a bit of a traicionera or traicionero, a bit treacherous, is a great way to prevent infidelity and reroute your energy to be in a relationship with someone who's better off for you. However, as some of us know all too well, feeling jealous for too long can spoil an otherwise healthy relationship. Anxiety. Very much like if you have an expensive car with a brilliant alarm system, if you put that car in a dangerous environment and the alarm goes off because people are trying to rob or get into the car, great, you've been alarmed to threats in your environment that actually exist. However, if you then move that car into a safe environment and the alarm still starts to go off even unprovoked, then we got some problems. Depression. Feeling depressed because deep down you know the efforts you are expending in pursuit of a project or a relationship aren't going to pay off long term, is a great feedback mechanism for you to realise, hey man or chica, you need to reroute your energy elsewhere because this isn't worth it. However, feeling depressed all of the time is going to prevent you from being able to seize opportunities if and when they come. Being hopeful is a great way to spark your motivation before you start something. However, feeling hopeful all of the time, and you're likely going to plunge yourself into disaster when reality turns out different than how you hoped. Two more. Feeling grateful every now and then, we know, is a great way to flood your system with some lovely feel-good chemicals like serotonin. However, if you feel grateful all of the time, you're likely going to become very complacent and not want to move an inch off the sofa to change your life. Finally, if you feel excited, that is a great way for you to seize new opportunities, like a new relationship or a new job. However, feel excited all of the time, and then we start to get into problems like untrammeled positive emotion, where you not only become annoying to other people because you're so positive all of the time, but you invest energy into things that aren't going to pay off long term, like a toxic relationship or a terrible job. So, by dedicating your time and attention to the video for the next few minutes of your time, I promise that when you finish this video, you will finally be able to end this war you have with your emotions, where for no fault of your own, absolutely no fault of your own, you want to remove your negative emotions completely, only to feel your positive ones all of the time. And you're going to finish this video by being able to step into a fresh perspective of being more emotionally intelligent, which is rare in the world we live in nowadays. The reason why I said it's no fault of your own, why you might potentially have the perspective of negative emotions are bad and I want to avoid them at all costs, is because of some problems within our society of psychiatry and modern psychology. Positive psychology is a buzz nowadays, where people just want to focus on maximising positive emotions in order to get rid of these ugly ones. However, this is where the problem stems from. To give you an example, if you're a doctor or you're a mental health professional and someone comes to you with a problem, usually what you're going to do is you're going to highlight the symptoms and you're going to investigate those symptoms to try and find the root cause. However, in modern psychiatry, what usually happens is the symptoms that the patient feels are depicted out to be the problem because they're so distressing. In other words, it's easier to say your low mood, your depression, or your anxiety, or your agoraphobia, what have you, is a consequence of a broken brain, rather than saying, oh no, the situation you're in is actually valid for you to feel these emotions. A little explanation there. So, what we're going to cover in this video is... Oh. By the way, someone commented the other day saying, I don't watch the videos for the actual content, I just watch it to see Lewis rub the, rub the whiteboard. Apparently it's ASMR for you guys, so I'll keep it in. First of all, we're going to... Oh, by the way, this whole video is going to take an evolutionary psychological approach to emotions based on a groundbreaking book called Good Reasons for Bad Feelings by renowned evolutionary psychiatrist Dr. Randolph Dessay. First of all, we will cover what emotions are, a lot simpler than you think, how they relate to goals, because we humans naturally want to move towards and away from things, don't know why I'm running on the spot, how negative emotions can be useful, low mood and the art of giving up, yep, giving up, there's a science to it, and then finally I'm going to leave you with some practicalities, 6 ways to deal with your emotions. But first of all, the main thing I want you to remember throughout this whole video is your emotions are for your genes, not you. However, to understand what that means, we have to first cover what are emotions in the first place. Okay, point number 1, what is an emotion? Let's briefly touch on this. Evolutionarily, emotions are specialised states that have evolved to help people cope with challenges that have occurred repeatedly over time. Key word, however, is evolved, because remember what we said, emotions weren't designed, meaning they haven't just sprouted up out of nowhere. The emotions you and I feel on a day-to-day basis are a direct consequence of the problems and situations our ancestors had to deal with that sparked the evolution of these emotions to help our ancestors better deal with these problems and situations and to stand a better chance at survival. To look at this with even more simplicity, however, just think about emotions as they either want you to pursue something, opportunity, or move away from something, threat or loss. Just on this point, I wanted to briefly mention that so far throughout this video, I might have confused you or even irritated you a bit by saying the whole point is to move above seeing emotions as either good or bad, positive or negative in a general sense, and yet I still continue to use the phrases of positive or negative emotions. However, throughout this video, when I use the word positive or negative, I don't mean it as a value judgment, good or bad. When I say positive, I mean move towards, negative, move away from. Just wanted you to note that. An analogy that might be helpful for emotions is think about them as if they're the different tones you can play on an electrical keyboard. Not sure if you had an electrical keyboard when you was younger. I did, probably drove my mum up the wall. On the keyboard you can play a classical tone, jazz or salsa tone, and the tones you can play are different in some ways, but in some ways they're very similar. It's the same with emotions. They're all different, but in some ways they're all very similar. Finally, however, the best perspective to look at emotions through the lens of, as we've mentioned, is through the eyes of an engineer. Because it's very easy to look at things in terms of their function. And of course, the main question we're moving away from is, take low mood or anxiety, for example. The general question is, how is low mood useful? Or what is the use of anxiety? But such questions are so general, you're unlikely to get any answers. And a little philosophical point I've realised recently here, if you're not getting an answer, you're asking the wrong question. So of course, our engineer perspective question of emotions is this emotion I feel proportional to the situation I'm in? In other words, as we've mentioned, it's not how is low mood or how is anxiety useful, it's in what situations is low mood or anxiety useful. And you also, with this engineer point of view, understand how emotions can sometimes be very tricky because they are benefiting your genes at the expense of you, which we're going to get into in a few points' time because that probably sounded a little bit confusing. But just by asking that question that we've covered so far throughout this video, is the emotion I feel proportional to the situation I'm in, instantly gives you the opportunity to increase your emotional intelligence and finally end this war where you're constantly butting heads with your emotions and trying to escape your negative ones. Anyway, let's now deep dive into what we really mean by your emotions are for your genes, not you. I use this because when I use this, you can't see it on the video, but it just leaves a load of black marks. This is just precaution. Like double glazing, you know, doubling up. Anyway, to put it bluntly, what we mean when we say your emotions are for your genes and not you is this process of natural selection and evolution over time couldn't give a crap about whether you're happy or not. It just wants you to survive, so your genes can continue and you can make more babies. To highlight this, let's focus in on this example of jealousy, because I know it's an extreme example and we touched on it a little bit at the beginning of the video, but it's topical on this channel at the moment because one of you guys rightly commented the other day asking for advice on how to stop feeling jealous in response to things your partner is doing. And my comment back, obviously you guys could tell, is one, hold your horses, this video is upcoming, but two, why would you not want to feel jealous at certain times? At the same time though, that doesn't remove the reality that jealousy is a very destructive emotion. So why do we have it at all? Why not get rid of it completely? In fact, in the 1960s, people did try to get rid of it completely. Hippie communes. Not sure if you've ever gone to a hippie society where they actually live, but a year ago I spent Christmas in Tenerife in Spain. And one of my friends was like, oh, we have to go to this hippie beach, you'll love it. Not sure why he thought I'd love it, but anyway, we arrived, everyone was naked, but this was the interesting thing. People were in couples, you know, man and woman, but everyone was kissing everyone else. I wasn't. I was sat back, you know, taking notes in my psychological handbook to tell a story about this one day, but everyone was kissing everyone. So this is what hippie communes tried to do in the 1960s, promote this idea of free love and get rid of jealousy completely. But none of these communes survived after the 1960s because even though it's destructive, if you remove it, jealousy will grow like a weed. In fact, an evolutionary psychological researcher called David Buss, maybe you've heard of him, he found that 13% of all homicides are committed by a spouse. So that's either a man killing a woman or a woman killing a man. Right, even though it's destructive, let me paint a picture for you. Let's say we have two men, David and James. David doesn't have the ability to feel jealous at all. He's in a relationship, but his perspective is, love, you can do whatever you want, I'm completely open, whatever floats your boat, I'm happy with. James, however, has the capacity to feel jealousy. Let's imagine this was 5,000 years ago, these people existed, David and James. Who stood a better chance at getting their genes promoted or continued into the next generation? So David, in response to his partner talking to another man and potentially getting impregnated by him, by the way, I know this sounds vulgar and a bit inhumane, but I'm just talking from evolutionary perspectives. He doesn't care. Oh, do whatever you want. She's talking to another man. I'm a hippie, free-flowing, whatever floats your boat. But what he doesn't realise is this free-flowing perspective is terrible from the point of view of his genes surviving. Because think about it. Sandra, let's call her, couldn't think of a cave woman name. Igor, no, that's a bloke's name. She now gets impregnated by another man. 9 months, David is going to have to wait. 9 months of blue balls. Not only 9 months while she's obviously growing, but after that, I don't have the vocabulary for this, After that, he's then going to have to wait years while she's breastfeeding this kid who isn't his and child rearing. So the bottom line here is the man or person, man or woman, who has the ability to feel jealousy stands a much better chance at having kids. Because James, when he notices his partner being a bit treacherous, can rein that in. His jealousy sparks, has a conversation, what's going on, you know, am I not fulfilling you in the bedroom, in the caveman bedroom and all that? That's the bottom line. So I want you to think twice before you think about getting rid of jealousy completely. Even though it's destructive at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason. Ding, 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 ding. Survival, baby. Not explaining that again, Jesus. So the main term I want you to remember in terms of a psychological approach for this is obviously we're looking at this from an evolutionary point of view, but you can think about it as if we're looking at it diagonal. We're taking a diagonal psychological approach rather than just positive or negative. I've drawn a little table down here so you can see, because positive psychology of course is going to focus on how can we get those positive emotions in excess and make sure that the negative emotions are deficient, but of course that causes problems as we've mentioned. Diagonal psychology takes the approach of understanding that even negative emotions can be deficient in David's case. And so too can positive emotions be excessive. Just quickly, I want to finalise this example of jealousy because I just thought about this in my head. Remember a few minutes ago we said emotions can be good for your genes, but bad for you. What we mean by that is, in the example of James, he feels jealousy. He then gets the reassurance from his partner that nothing's going on and even stops him from being interested in other people, signalling his investment in the relationship. And yet, even though he has the evidence that nothing is going on and he doesn't really have a reason to feel jealous, he still feels jealousy. That continued feeling of this destructive emotion, which is now in excess, is brilliant for his survival, but terrible for him as an individual who wants to self-actualise and optimise his life outside of mere survival. Hopefully that makes sense. But what I'm hoping this knowledge has given you the permission to realise so far is that the person who is going to flourish most throughout life is the moi, the M-O-I. It's my term. I just made that up on the spot. The most optimized individual is the human being who can feel a wide range of emotions, rather than just feeling emotional gridlock into either excesses or deficiencies. Again, remember, you want to feel the right emotion at the right time for the right duration. And this knowledge gives you the ability to interrogate yourself when your emotions spark in order to understand, is this excessive or is this deficient? Because of course, we're talking about moving towards opportunity and away from threats in the realm of emotions. To give you two quick examples, feeling anxiety and worry when new opportunities arise in your life is worse than useless. You want to feel enthusiastic and desire. So too, feeling happy relaxation in response to threat or loss in your life is also worse than useless. You want to feel anxiety and worry. However, this doesn't change the reality that emotions can be very, very confusing. What if you're in a scenario, for example, where you have a brilliant job opportunity, but it's for a company with opposing political views? Or you notice that your best friend's partner is cheating. What do you do then? Well, this is where we get into the realm of unpacking the relationship between emotions and goals. Us humans try to get things: food, resources, sex, power, status, and avoid threats and losses. But we can't get or move away from these things without setting goals. No matter how much you hear people on the internet say it's all about the process, it's all about the journey, us humans are goal-setting creatures by nature. I very much have the perspective of it's all about the journey, it's all about the process, but even still, you can't avoid setting goals. Every single minute throughout your life, you are working towards a goal of either moving towards something or avoiding something. Eating, food, getting someone's number, working on a project, watching a video to completion. Who knows? Here is a table which highlights the different emotions, simplistic ones, that might arise in response to opportunity or threat. We have the physical and social realms. Before a opportunity, you've noticed it in your life, you will feel desire and excitement to pursue it. After you actualize that opportunity and seize it, you'll feel pleasure and joy. However, when you're working towards that opportunity, whatever it is, and you get an alternative outcome than you had hoped, you'll experience disappointment. In response to threat, when you notice that threat, you'll feel fear and anxiety. After the threat is followed through, you'll feel pain and sadness. However, if you manage to avoid the threat, you'll feel relief. So practically speaking, what this whole section is about in a nutshell is you will feel best in life, and you do feel best in life, when you are working towards a goal of high importance and that is possible to achieve. And what that means in relation to your emotions is the emotions you feel as you walk the path of achieving this goal are the feedback you need to listen to as to whether this goal is achievable or not. In other words, whether this goal is worth investing energy and time into or not. Because let's say you set a goal, no matter what it is. Let's say you want to marry someone, a relationship goal, or you want to secure a certain job, or you want to become a graphic designer and pour all of your energy into this. Okay, so you start walking the path of achieving that goal. Let's stick with the example of marrying someone. But you experience barriers across your path naturally. The negative emotions you feel in response to these barriers in the relationship might be red flags. It might be incompatibility. It might be unalignment within your values. Okay, the first barrier to you wanting to marry this person, which is your goal, is going to spark the negative feedback. Negative being avoid this thing. I'm not saying bad, remember, of you feeling the emotion of anger because you're now blocked from achieving this goal. If you then continue to walk the path in spite of these barriers, your negative emotions are going to spark even further along this pursuit, but they're going to become more intense. You'll then feel low mood if you start to see more red flags in this person. Oh, deep down you now realise this isn't going to work out, but sunk cost fallacy. I've been in this relationship for 3 years. I need to continue. So you continue to pour effort and time into something that isn't beneficial for you long term. Your emotions are screaming at you. This isn't good for our genes. This isn't going to work out. This is a waste of time. Boom. You feel depressed, withdrawn, and you don't feel like your usual self. If you don't listen to your emotions along the path you walk to achieve a goal, you are robbing yourself of the one feedback mechanism you have to tell whether this goal is worth investing time and energy into or not. It's only until you start to unpack, why do I feel so depressed all of the time? I have no idea what's going on. Oh, it's because deep down I know this relationship isn't going to work and I've been wasting my time, investing my time and energy into it. Depression, what do you want me to realise? Hey man, let's change goals. In other words, knowing when to give up is one of the best tools in life when it comes to your emotions. And you're able to best give up only after you first listen to what your negative emotions are trying to tell you in pursuit of a goal. Ooh, I got a bit pumped there. Just to illustrate this point one point further, what we're talking about here along the goal pursuit line is hope. And there was a Canadian psychologist called Carsten Warsch who followed up studies with parents trying to get their kids help with cancer. And the parents who were most set on their goals of helping their kids beat the cancer experienced more depression. they were probably around here because they realised in a very harsh way the goal was unachievable. However, the parents who had a better ability to adapt their goals experienced less depression. So they were the human beings who, at this point, their goal, of course, was to help their child beat cancer, listened to their withdrawal and accepted the fact that they were working towards an unachievable goal, and then rerouted their goal to something else, perhaps spending quality time with their kid instead of trying to change reality. If you want to learn more about this is a psychological concept called rugged flexibility. Check out a book called Master of Change. Save that in your diary for later. I would recommend that. But the word goal, that was a lot of information we just covered, but the word goal doesn't reflect the nuances of human pursuits. For example, the word goal doesn't do justice to the diversity of our pursuits as humans, because some goals are short term. For example, trying to convince your conversational partner that what you said was a joke and it wasn't meant to be offensive. Some goals are long term, such as raising children. But when we use the word goal, what we mean is any action where you're trying to get, find, become, escape, or avoid something. More diverse terms could be mission, life task, enterprise, aim, purpose, pursuit, or personal meaning. Because the main capability we have as human beings is we can project ourselves into the future, conjure up many different possibilities, and work towards actualizing those plans. But the main point here, we mentioned it a few minutes ago, in relation to your emotions are turned on or off depending on the goals that you pursue. So what does that mean practically for you? If you want to feel different emotions, change the goals that you're pursuing so that they are in favour of turning on the emotions you want to feel. Emotions want you to either do something more or avoid something. Feeling excited before a social opportunity signals this is good for you, do this more. Feeling embarrassment after saying a joke at a table that bombs makes you feel disappointed and upset, signalling don't do that ever again. But upon this point, now we're getting into the more social aspect of things. And it's really important to apply this to our relationships and dealings with other people. Whoa, got some frameworks on the board which seem very complicated. Don't worry, they're a lot simpler than you think. But before I explain them, I just want to begin by saying everything that we've covered in the last 5 minutes offers you an incredible opportunity to increase your social intelligence and your understanding of yourself at a much deeper level. Because it would have been a lot easier for me to record a video which was 5 or 10 minutes on this topic and just say, by the way, depression means this, anxiety means this, excitement and happiness also mean this, and give you an objective, applicational approach to emotions as a human being. But we haven't done that because we've emphasized the situational importance of emotions arising within you. And we've just covered that your emotions are turned on or off depending on the goals that you are pursuing. So in order to understand other people at a much deeper level, you apply the same approach to them and you understand the emotions that other people feel are a result of the goals that they are pursuing. Practically, this will help you understand why taking other people's advice isn't the best idea. And second of all, this will help you understand whether you're compatible with someone to get into a relationship with or be friends with. Let's go to the frameworks. There are 6 areas in which people can allocate their resources. And by that, we mean time, things they have, like money or whatnot, and energy. We've got abilities, occupational, so that's work, income, children, love, and social. And once you start to observe other people's actions and allocate where they put their time and energy based on these 6 factors, you get a better understanding of them. Because someone might be a party animal, and then you can start to see, oh, they're investing a lot of resources into this side of the equation, just their social life and love life, all of their income is fueling this. This person might not be the most compatible for me because I'm the opposite. If someone is child focused, of course, their abilities are going to fund provide them opportunity to care for their children, so too is their income. Someone who's career oriented, that might float your boat, but maybe it won't, because you can see, I want to have children. This person is solely focused on their career. They're not the right person for me. Look at the big arrows. However, someone, rare, but might have a rich complexity where their resources are distributed across the 6 avenues, and that might be someone who floats your boat. With this understanding in mind, you can start to see why previous relationships of yours or previous friendships ended for one reason or another. Maybe there was a lack of alignment between your resource allocation and the resource allocation of someone else. Take the party animal who's with someone who's child focused. Children isn't on their equation, so that relationship isn't going to work out. But the bottom line here is, in order to understand other people better, you don't want to differentiate between the emotions this person is feeling and their goals. You want to realise that the emotions they feel are directly linked to the goals that they're pursuing. Second of all, this is highlighting why taking advice from other people isn't the best idea in the world, especially if this other person has a completely different resource allocation to you. Let's say someone who's career oriented takes advice from someone who's child focused. You should spend more time with your kids, or you should really prioritize having a family. Having a family isn't on this person's list of things to do. Vice versa. If someone who's career oriented started lecturing someone who's child focused, like, yo, you got to get that moolah, you know what I'm saying? It's just not going to end well. So this gives you even more permission to understand that the shoulds and you should do this, you should do that, other people are throwing onto you, you don't have to listen to them. This person's resource allocation is completely different from mine. That's fine. All the best. I'm not going to take your advice. I only want to seek advice from someone whose resource allocation is similar to mine. I did do a shorter video on this framework. I'm going to link it if you would like to watch it. It's only 10 minutes, I think. The title is How to Read People Like a Book. This was a segment from that video. Feel free to watch that. But now we're almost finalising the video. Let's cover a few more approaches to decoding negative emotions. 3 days ago, I was laying on my bed and the smoke alarm randomly went off. It beeped twice, so I went up to change the battery because I thought it was broken, but as soon as I went to put my hand on the smoke alarm, it stopped beeping. I thought, so I went back and laid on the bed. 5 minutes later, the smoke alarm went off again, and now I started to become suspicious, thinking there was a fire or smoke in the house. Again, I went to touch it, but as soon as I went to touch it, the smoke alarm stopped beeping. I'll give it one more try. And I went and laid down, and almost as soon as I put my head on the pillow, the smoke alarm went off again. So this time I checked the whole house to see whether there was smoke anywhere, and there was smoke nowhere to be found. The smoke alarm was malfunctioning. This is exactly how negative emotions work. They are like a smoke alarm. When they go off and detect a real threat in the environment, like smoke, we're grateful for their existence. However, when they go off unprovoked, they're incredibly annoying, like I experienced 3 days ago. So now we're going to cover how negative emotions can be useful. And the main examples we're going to use here are depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and agoraphobia. And the main framing I want you to keep in mind, as always, is emotions are for your genes, not you, and the utility of emotions depends entirely on the situation you're in. Let's begin with anxiety. Let me give you an evolutionary example as to the utility of it. Let's imagine you're a caveman all those years ago and you're walking across a desert and suddenly you see a river in the distance that you want to walk towards because you're thirsty. However, you hear a rustling in some bushes close by. That rustling could be a monkey, could be a fellow caveman, or it could be a lion. So now you've got two options. On the one hand, you could forget the river, listen to the fact your anxiety is sparking you into a panic attack and realise that I could be dinner for that lion. How many calories would you expend to run away? Probably about 100 calories to sprint very quickly. However, if you stayed and chose to take a risk in favour of having a little drink from the river, but a lion appears from the bushes, what's the cost of the calories you expend? 100,000, which is what you will be as a meal for this lion. So it's a mathematical equation, your anxiety. I have to think about the math now. There is a 1 in 1,000 chance that that lion might be in that bush, which means that 999 times out of 1,000, you're going to flee unnecessarily, and your anxiety won't be based on a genuine threat. But fleeing 1 time out of 1,000 will save your life. And staying in the environment where the lion is present is 1,000 times riskier than fleeing unnecessarily. So the main point I want you to get from this section is the permission to realise that your negative emotions have evolved to be helpful. And they have evolved to help you survive in situations like this. They're not a bug of existence, they are a feature that you cannot remove and that you don't want to remove anyway. I know that was an ancestral example, which doesn't seem very applicable to our day-to-day life because we're not running from lions, but let's look at the real world. Take something like generalised anxiety disorder, which is twice as more likely in women than men. Why? Well, look at the life of a woman. This isn't me giving a sob story or arguing for feminism or some of that nonsense, but the life of a woman is incredibly difficult, especially if she is a mother. I have 2 sisters, obviously I have a mum, and I know many women in my life who have children. And the thing that they always say to me is as soon as they had their kids, they became a lot more anxious because it's now no longer a case of, oh, we're going to go hiking this weekend, or, oh, we're going to go to the cinema. It's now, oh, we're going to go do this thing. Let me be anxious to think about all the things that could possibly go wrong so I can prevent them happening so something doesn't happen to my child. Additionally, if you're a woman without children, then just look at the fact that you exist in a world where there are other human beings, men, who have a lot more upper body strength and present a big physical threat. That's something to be anxious about. Even looking at humans in general, getting away from the gender debate. The question isn't, why do some people get anxious? The question is, why isn't everyone anxious at every second of every single day? There are enough threats in our environment and things to be worried about. Oh, sorry. Oh, I got a bit passionate in that last bit, but I got pumped because it wasn't until I realised all of this stuff that I gifted myself the opportunity to see that change doesn't have to happen across a really long time frame. Change can happen in an instant when you realise something like negative emotions are smoke detectors. They go off to alarm you of threats, but the problem arises when they go off unprovoked, and it is your job to determine whether the smoke alarm going off is proportional to the situation you're in or not. For example, it wasn't until I realised me feeling this social anxiety before I go to this party or walk into this venue is normal because there's people inside, complete strangers who I've never met, that pose a potential threat to my existence. And then I could finally end this war I had with trying to escape my negative emotions and feeling afraid because of all of this manifestation stuff that is going on the internet nowadays. I no longer felt afraid to feel any negative emotion at any point in time, because I could finally understand that this might be useful for me right now to feel depressed or anxious in response to this thing, and I need to listen to what the depression or anxiety wants me to do. I just apologise for getting pumped and got even more pumped. But the main problem arises because there's a mismatch between our world and the world our ancestors lived in. We no longer experience these threats in our environment anymore, such as lions or running away from predators. Our ancestors did, which means we still have the emotional mechanisms that they had, but we live in a bit of a different world, so our threats are different. For example, my mum sells soap, and she has to sell soap at a farmer's market. And there's another woman at the farmer's market who she was telling me about who has panic attacks. Randomly, when people are walking past the market, her body floods with anxiety and she loses her breath and she has to sit down and take a complete break from everything that she's doing. Her anxiety is a smoke alarm going off unprovoked in an otherwise healthy smoke alarm system. To give you a quick example as to the cost effectiveness of natural selection, making us fear things and making us feel anxious, think about it. Most fears aren't innate, meaning you're not born with them. So fear is learned. Susan Meneka and her colleagues in the 1970s, she was a psychologist, they got young lab-raised monkeys to reach across a toy snake in order to grab a treat. And they did so without any fear. However, when they showed those monkeys a video of another monkey coiling in fear from the toy snake, that created an enduring fear in the first monkeys. However, when they showed them other monkeys videos, or did the same by getting monkeys to reach across a toy flower and then showing those monkeys videos of other monkeys coiling in fear from the toy flower, that didn't create any enduring fear, suggesting your brain is prepared to fear some cues rather than others. Why would natural selection do this? Well, it's cost effective. If I can learn a fear from you without having to philosophically assess my experience of whether that thing should be fearful or not, then I stand a better chance at surviving. Maybe that's an opportunity for you to assess some of your most common fears. Are they learned from other people or learned from your experience? Let's quickly cover an example of agoraphobia, as if we couldn't go any deeper into the negative examples. Agoraphobia is the experience of intense panic attacks whenever you leave a comfortable environment like your house and enter an open space where there's loads of other people there, and your primary fear is something bad is going to happen to you in that open space and everyone is going to watch you while it happens, which makes you too anxious to leave your house at times, or you never want to leave your house alone. I've never experienced this, but my nan has for about a year, and I spoke to her about it, and she became incredibly dependent on my granddad to leave the house and do other things with, and she would be out in the town centre at times, and suddenly a wave of anxiety would overcome her and she would have to retreat back home. But think about this from an evolutionary point of view, the advantages of it. Let's say you're a caveman and 3 days ago you narrowly escaped being eaten by a lion. What's the next logical thing to do? Return home, back to camp. Do not leave at all. If you do leave, don't go alone. And if you're out, away from camp, and you notice any sign of danger, retreat immediately. Remember, negative emotions can be false alarms, like a false smoke alarm in an otherwise helpful system. As Søren Kierkegaard said, the Danish philosopher, he who has learned to be anxious in the right way has learned the ultimate. Now, before we finalise this video with the practicalities of the 6 ways to deal with your emotions better, let's now cover the evolutionary approach to anxiety's close cousin, depression. Or as some people say, low mood. Mood is an interesting phenomenon because it's not like an organ in the body we can take out and dissect to assess the symptoms of. Instead, we have to approach it from an outside looking in perspective with an engineer mindset. But right off the bat, a very valid question would be, why as human beings do we have the ability to feel a variation in mood in the first place? Why not just walk around feeling numb all of the time? Why sometimes do you feel very high mood? Sometimes you're at baseline, and then other times you feel depressed and very low mood. Well, we mentioned it a little bit in reference to being the most optimized individual, is because the individual who can feel a variation in mood as they progress towards a goal stands a much better chance at survival, because that variation in mood is the feedback that they need to tell whether they're progressing towards this goal or not. And that variation in mood helps them deal with certain situations and problems. I'm going to explain this with two examples down here, and listen up, because I'm about to explain why you should never expect to be happy all of the time. And when I heard these two examples myself for the first time, it blew my mind. Anyway, from an evolutionary point of view, mood shifts to help you cope with two different types of situations. The technical terms are propitious situations and unpropitious situations. Propitious meaning advantageous, unpropitious meaning disadvantageous. To give you two examples, caveman times. If it's rare for you to see bison coming across the valley, you're going to need your high mood to spark and you to feel desire, enthusiasm and excitement to give you the energy needed to go out, kill some bison, bring it back home and provide your family with food. A modern world example would be if you're a salesman and you're in an advantageous situation where you have loads of customers come into your car dealership because you're a car salesman, putting in extra effort to get the sales is going to pay off because of the situation you're in being advantageous. However, if hardly any bison have been sighted over the past few months, that's a disadvantageous situation. So you're naturally going to feel low mood, because if you felt high mood in that situation and you said, okay, even though I haven't seen any bison in the last few months, I'm still going to go out and I'm still going to hunt to try and find one, you're potentially going to invest energy into something that isn't going to result in a payoff. So too, if you're a salesman and there's an economic crisis, invest in extra effort to go out and find customers when you know deep down there's not going to be any customers willing to pay for what you're offering, then it makes sense that you're going to feel low mood, which gives you the feedback of don't invest energy in this area because there's not going to be enough payback. So the person who feels high mood all of the time isn't best suited to deal with advantageous or disadvantageous situations. It's only by feeling variability that you can capitalize on opportunity and prevent yourself from investing energy into something that won't pay off. Let's broaden the scope a little bit here. When you feel high mood, what are the characteristics? You feel energetic, expansive, creative. You want to broaden and build and your horizons are looking brilliant. Imagine you're in the first stages of a relationship and you find someone very attractive. You've just begun a new job or you're beginning a new project. You want to feel high mood in those situations because there's a potentially big payoff that you need to invest energy into right now. To put a little graph in the video, you can see the characteristics of low mood on the left, high mood on the right. Pessimism, optimism, risk avoidance, risk taking. You can see the exact opposites of the characteristics of low mood and high mood on the table. But if you summarised all of them on the left, low mood, again, it would be avoid. If you could summarise the characteristics of high mood on the right, it would be pursue. Remember when we drew the little man and we said emotions just want you to pursue or avoid something? This summarizes it brilliantly, this table. So overall, what this highlights is, of course, low mood is signaling to you, don't invest energy into this area, but most importantly, this highlights one of the best abilities you can develop throughout life is listening to your low mood, understanding why it might be present, and then developing the ability of giving things up and knowing when to quit. Because take your ancestor. Let's say this one. He ventures out into the wilderness to look for some bison. He's got some big decisions to make. How long should he venture out for? Where should he venture out to? How long should he stay in this new hunting position until he realizes no bison are going to come? I need to return back home because I'm now in danger and wasting energy. But most importantly, this highlights life's 3 most important decisions. How much energy should I spend? How fast should I spend this energy? And when should I quit? Your life is a collection of you asking and answering these questions on varying time scales and at varying intensities. Take the quick evolutionary example of you're a caveman picking berries from a bush. If you never had the ability to feel variations in mood and feel bored, you would stand there picking berries all day until you were eaten by a lion. It's only by having the ability to feel low mood and bored that he could realise, oh, I've got enough berries, let's go back home. There was an example that Randolph Nesse mentioned in his book that I found quite interesting. He spoke of one of his patients who was a young man at university. And he was in a situation where he hated what he was studying and he wanted to quit university. But he was in a relationship with a girl of similar age. But his girlfriend said, if you quit university, I'll break up with you. But deep down, he knew that he loved his girlfriend. However, he also knew that she wanted to move out to another town in America where he didn't want to move to. Deep down, he was convinced the relationship would work out because he knew he loved her. But he came to Randolph Nesse, a psychiatrist, because he was showing symptoms of depression. Completely unaware of why he was feeling this low mood and depression, Nesse helped this young man realise that he felt depressed because deep down he knew he wanted to quit school, but he knew that decision would mean the relationship would end. So he knew at a fundamental level the relationship wouldn't work out. So his depression was feedback for him to realise, stop investing energy into this relationship because you know it's not going to work out. I thought that was very interesting. I wanted to mention that. Another example, which is a bit more funny, vervet monkeys, right? Stay with me. So there was a British psychiatrist called John Price, and he showed that chickens, when they lose a fight, descend in the pecking order by acting submissive in order to reduce other chickens who are higher in the pecking order attacking them. But back to the vervet monkeys. Vervet monkeys, they live in small groups with males and females. And the alpha males get all the mating opportunities and they have bright blue testicles. But if the alpha male loses a fight with another male, what he'll do is he'll huddle into a ball, he'll rock back and forth, and he'll withdraw from all of the activities in his life and he'll act depressed until his testicles turn from a bright blue into a dusky grey. And evolutionarily, this is known as involuntarily yielding, because it's better to signal that you're not a threat by being depressed to the male who's just defeated you, rather than being attacked again. I know, that's a brilliant example. But what they did is, with other psychologists called Leon Sloman and Russell Gardner, they wanted to apply these findings of vervet monkeys to depressed humans in a clinic. And they found that people show depressive symptoms after failure or losing in a competition, naturally so. So low mood is a normal response to losing something. And depression, in response to this loss, helps you withdraw from it, so no further losses can happen. But the interesting thing is the depressed patients recovered when they realised they was competing in something that was unwinnable. Oh, it's not on the board. They were trying to achieve an unachievable goal, and instead they simply shifted their focus to work towards something else that was achievable. So this brings us to the main question. When should you quit something? You should quit something when you're expending more calories in exchange for the payoffs you're getting. To play devil's advocate, sometimes being tenacious and pushing through pays off. But not all the time. You have to be careful. As Randolph Nesse says, low mood is not always an emanation from a disordered brain. It can be a normal response to pursuing an unreachable goal. So to finalise this point with a practical tip, always remember the question isn't how is low mood or depression useful? It's in what situations are low mood or depression useful? Depression or low mood in a situation where there's lots of opportunities in front of you is unhelpful. However, depression or low mood in a situation where you investing energy into something won't pay off is more than useful. There's just a few more things I want to mention about low mood and depression before we finish. I just wanted to remind you of when emotional problems can arise. So they can arise when your baseline is too low, baseline is too high, your emotional response is deficient, excessive, aroused by inappropriate cues, or is independent of cues. That can be a really tough one. And I know I keep saying it again and again and again, but please remember that what is normal in your emotional response is dependent on the situation you're in. For example, your blood pressure being above 170 at rest is abnormal, but it's normal during exercise. Hence, when you feel depressed, it's much easier to say, I feel depressed because of a chemical imbalance in my brain, rather than, oh, I feel depressed because I've just got a new job with a new salary, but that means I'll have to give up on my dream of being a graphic designer. That very nuanced example is what we've tried to tackle this topic of emotions from the angle of throughout this video. And staying in the theme of being as practical as possible, you might want to keep these metrics close at hand whenever you are being your own psychotherapist and assessing your emotional response to something. And observe whether your emotional response is potentially one of these points. For example, let's imagine you're feeling particularly depressed at the moment. Not saying you are, just imagine. You might come to the realization that your response in proportion to the situation you're in is a tad excessive because you're now isolating yourself in your room for days on end from other people, which isn't helping you out anymore. It's just becoming debilitating to you and keeping you locked in a downward spiral, especially when you compare what our ancestors would have had to do, which is after their period of isolation, they would have eventually had to venture out and get food, meaning they would have to exercise and speak to other people, socialise. Because in our day and world, it's very easy to isolate yourself, but you don't have to order food and you don't necessarily have to socialise with other people. And upon that point, life can feel as if you're walking through a very thick swamp at times with very heavy armour on. And doing all of this stuff by yourself can feel very burdensome. However, when you continue walking through the swamp, you eventually start to step higher and higher, and soon you're out of the swamp. But you have to enact the courage to continue walking. And that act of courage can be you enacting the emotional intelligence to dissect your emotional responses alone by journaling or speaking to yourself out loud. As you guys know, that helps me. Or going to therapy. That can be the courageous first step. You don't have to do all of this stuff alone. If you want to go deeper, just to finalise this point of depression, you might want to check out Swedish psychoanalyst Emmy Gutt's work. She wrote a book called Productive and Unproductive Depression, Its Functions and Failures, and it mainly highlights how it can be important to withdraw in a state of isolation from the world and your adventures in order to consider other ways to direct your energy, which are more beneficial for you. However, taken too far, that keeps you in that downward spiraling loop, as mentioned, where it becomes excessive. You might want to check out Benjamin Hart's work from the 1980s. He coined this term sickness behavior, which describes how, I'm sure you've experienced this before, when you feel sick or ill or particularly low mood, you don't want to do anything and you feel energyless. He argued this makes sense because it's a way of protecting yourself from predators when you're not up to the task energetically, and it helps you to conserve energy in order to fight the infection. And finally, a little point you might find interesting is there's been a big debate evolutionarily as to whether rumination, that process of having negative thoughts again and again about negative memories, is helpful or not. Some studies have shown rumination does dispose you to depression, but other studies have shown that it's a way for you to stop expending your energy externally in order for you to go internally and to think about how to solve problems. However, most experts do agree that rumination rarely helps you solve problems. Just thought I'd mention that in. But anyway, this has been a long video. As most of the time with these long videos, I had no intention of it being this long. But as promised, here are 6 things that will help you deal with your emotions better. These 6 points, I know there's 4 on the board, don't worry, there's 2 more to come, are from Beth Kurland's book, You Don't Have to Change Everything. And the main thing she argues is that emotions themselves aren't the problem. It's what we do with them that are the problem. And an analogy here is they can be like undigested bits of food. They stay in your system for a long time if you don't digest them. And the first way you can deal with your emotions when they arise is you can take something called the anchor view. And this is where you rely on something that provides you with that stillness, that stability, and that comfort throughout this emotional distress. It might be a particular environment. It could be a particular activity. For me, I know that me walking through the woods is one of my anchors that I rely on during emotional distress. It could be a particular smell of a perfume. I've heard psychologically that can be very helpful in times of distress. But what might it be for you? I would suggest find an environment that provides you with that stability through this chaos. Second of all, you might want to take something called the child view. And this is where you look at your emotion. I'm looking at the notes. This is where you look at your emotions as if you are an innately curious child. You don't avoid them. You turn towards them with curiosity. And you wonder how the emotion might want you to be with it. Look at the situation through the emotion's eyes. You don't intellectualize your emotions here, you instead embody them. And you might want to do so by doing something called noticing and naming. This is where you notice the sensations you feel in your body in the present moment, and then you label them with a name. You might say, I feel a tightness in my stomach. I feel heat around my head. Or I feel a sad, sunken feeling in my heart. You want to become aware of, you don't want to be eaten up by. Third of all, you might want to take something called the audience view. Rather than you being the actor on stage, instead you adopt the approach that you are in the audience watching the actors on stage, which are your emotions. Here you want to distinguish between the raw emotion you feel and what your mind is attaching to it. For example, you might say, there is sadness, and I am aware of thoughts telling me that I should be over this by now. You see how there's a difference? It's as if, like we said, the actor is showing something with their body, however, they're telling something different with their narration of their voice. There is loss, and my mind is telling me that I'll never find anyone else who cares about me. there is heartbreak. And I'm having the thought that this relationship ended because I'm not good enough. Oh, that's making me feel quite good, to be fair, reading these sentences, because it allows you to have distance from what your mind is throwing onto the emotion. The analogy here is it's like two arrows. The first arrow you're hit with is the experience of the emotion. The second arrow you're hit with is your interpretation of the emotion. Most of our problems come from our interpretation. This helps you snap out of emotional reasoning, and it also helps you to see how your thoughts are just interpretations. They're not facts, which gives you incredible levity above your emotions. The fourth point is you might want to adopt the point of view of the compassionate parent view. This is where you adopt the approach of seeing your emotions as if you're observing them from the perspective of another person. And this allows you to enact emotional alchemy. Simply, you adopt the role of a parent towards yourself. You might consider, if a dear friend or someone I care about deeply were feeling this emotion, how would I be with them right now? What kinds of comforting words or gestures might I offer? For example, words of comfort might include, "It's understandable what you're feeling. This is difficult. All your feelings are welcome," or "I'm with you here." A gesture of comfort might involve putting one's hand over one's heart. Oh, not over the mic. This is pretty good stuff. You might also question, if this emotion could talk to me, what might it say? Again, you might want to couple it with the audience view as if it's an actor on stage. How might I listen to it with care? If my emotion was a small child, how would it want me to be with it? Again, similar to the name and view, or notice and name. Would it want me to just listen, be present, put an arm around it, or something else? I like that one. I think that could be very useful. Oh, the audience view as well. I really like the idea of differentiating between the actor showing one thing with their body and narrating something different with their voice. Because if you were watching a play and you saw an actor do that, you would be very confused. And you would tap into this empathy for the actor where you would realise, your body's saying one thing but your mind is saying another thing. The problem here is the mind. The final 2 points, where's my thing? Second to last, we have the mirror view. This is where you try to get away from the negativity bias you usually have when you see yourself in the mirror. And instead, you don't take the whole view of the situation, you try to take the whole view of the situation. Little play on words there. You don't try to make this emotion go away, of course. Instead, you might want to call up the opposite of this emotion to again spark the process of emotional alchemy. And you can do so by asking, what was a previous time in your life when you went through something difficult and felt this same emotion? What helped you get through that? What inequalities or resources did you call upon to help you through? What inequality, if it were more present right now, might help you with this emotion? Perhaps acceptance, courage, care, tenacity, self-kindness? Call to mind a time when you experienced that quality. Or imagine stepping into the shoes of someone who embodies that quality. And think about how it would feel for that quality to sit side by side with this emotion you're feeling now. Ooh. What might this emotion show about your humanness and your capacity to care deeply? That's a nice view, because it's a great way to change your perspective and get you out of this emotional gridlock you're in of just thinking about this emotion you're feeling, by calling up the opposite to that emotion and realizing, oh, these two things exist along a spectrum. I'm at this end. How can I get to this end? Finally, we've got the ocean view. It's very easy to convince yourself that you're just a separate wave in an ocean, but you're not. You're connected to something larger and deeper when you are a wave. You're connected to the whole ocean. I know this sounds a bit woo-woo, but stay with me. In this sense, you're not separate in this world. You're connected to a multiplicity of other people who you could help right now, that could lift your self-focused emotional burden. Consider, who might you reach out to now you're feeling this emotion so that you don't feel so alone? What might you do that makes you feel part of a larger whole? Spend some time with family or friends, go to a community event, attend a religious gathering, visit a park where other people are gathered, something else. In what ways do you already contribute to the lives of others, such as through your work, your role in your family, the way you support your friends? Can you recognise and honour this right now? And finally, is there anything else you might do that gives you a sense of meaning and purpose outside of yourself, even in the midst of difficult emotions? They're the emotional views. The whole summary of this video in 3 sentences is: emotions are for your genes and not you. The utility of an emotion depends entirely on the situation you're in, and your mood shifts to give you a survival advantage in pursuit of a goal. And there are plenty of good reasons for bad feelings. If you've made it so far in the video, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your time and attention. I know this was a really long one. Please comment a emoji of a monkey down below and a brain, and the third emoji as your favourite emoji if you have made it this far. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Stay disciplined, playful. Oh, stay disciplined, playful and dangerous. Now I'm trying to act with a proper deep voice. Stay disciplined, playful and dangerous. Adios muchachos y muchachas.